I'm Ella Scotto, and we have the jigsaw with us. A jigsaw we're going to use to be able to make these irregular shaped cuts, and we can also use it to carve notches into boards. When we start a cut with a circular saw, if we were notching this in with a circular saw, because of the nature of that blade being circular, we're only going to get to the top corner of the board, and then the bottom corner would still be left in there. So we can use our jigsaw to finish off the cut, or we can just go ahead and make this cut completely with our jigsaw. This is a jigsaw that plugs into the wall. They also come battery operated, and I wouldn't necessarily say that one is better or worse than the other. Kind of just depends on what fits in your toolkit and what you already have and what would be a better use for you. If you have access to electricity and you don't plan on going far with your jigsaw, then one that tethers you to the wall will probably be fine. If you are planning on taking this up to the roof with you, or if you're planning on being someplace where you might not have reliable electricity hooked up, then maybe a battery operated one would be better for you. We have a jigsaw here that has this handle that you would hold on to with the trigger. They also come with more of a barrel, so you hold on to it and then kind of push it ahead of you, versus this, you're holding on from the top here, and then the blade is cutting down here. So we have our handle, we have our trigger, we have our base plate, and then we have a straight blade, which is different from our other saw blades, which are going to be circular in shape, like we already discussed with the circular saw. This little blade is going to allow us to make those fancy shapes because it's so small that we're going to be able to make turns, and it's going to be able to accommodate those tight corners. Over here, we have our quick release clamp, and so it makes it really easy to load and unload these saws. So I'm just going to rotate this clamp about 90 degrees roughly, and then it's going to release my blade for me. The shape of this blade is a T-shank, and this is going to be the most secure and easiest way to load and unload. The way they used to make these jigsaws is you would use the U-shaped blades, and you load them, and then you have to tighten a screw around them, and they're not as secure as these T-shaped ones. And so once these are loaded and locked into place, they're not going to come out while you're sawing. So I definitely recommend when you purchase your blades, you want to look for the T-shanked ones. So the other thing that we want to pay attention to when we're loading our blade is that it is fully in our track. There's a track here in front of our quick release clamp, and we want our blade to be centered in that track, because if it's not, then our blade isn't going to go straight up and down. So one of the things to know about the blade in our jigsaw is that it cannot be adjusted for the depth of cut. So we have to choose a blade that's going to be long enough to extend at least an inch below our material. Because what's going on is the blade is moving in this up and down motion. And so as it comes up, we want to make sure it doesn't come up so far that now it's in our material. And if that happens, the likelihood of kickback is going to increase. So we just want to make sure that our blade is going to be long enough to make sure that doesn't happen. Blades are going to be categorized according to what kind of material they're cutting, the length of them, and then also TPI. TPI is teeth per inch. You're going to want a lower TPI for your rougher cuts, the ones that don't need to be super clean, your framing lumber, because the lower TPI is going to give you a faster cut, but it's going to be rougher on the edges. Versus your higher TPI is going to be for your cleaner cuts and your finished surfaces, anything that you want it to look nice when you're finished. blades also come with the teeth facing in different directions. So you have your upward facing teeth and then your downward facing teeth. And when they're inserted into the jigsaw, they are actually going to be oriented like this. So your upward facing teeth are going to cut on the upward motion of the saw. And so what that is going to do is it's going to bring your material into your base plate. And so it's going to naturally hold the two together as you're cutting. The downward facing teeth is going to make your base plate come off of your material ever so slightly. And so you have to be sure to make sure to maintain contact as you're cutting, because it's going to want to push away and the likelihood of kickback is going to be greater. The benefits of the upward facing teeth is that, as we talked about, it pulls your material into your base plate. However, it's going to give you a rougher cut on that top surface, and the clean cut is going to be on the bottom surface. Versus your downward facing teeth, even though the cut itself is going to be a little bit trickier, it's going to be reversed. Your rough edge is going to be that bottom surface, and then your clean edge is going to be that top surface. And this is important to know because most of the time when you're laying something out, you're laying it out with your finished surface facing up, and that's what the surface you're drawing on, and then that's the surface you're going to be cutting into. And so if that's the case, you're going to want your downward facing teeth because you want that top surface to be cleaner. If it doesn't matter, or if you want to use the upward facing teeth, then you can maybe plan ahead and flip your material over so that your finished surface is actually on the bottom and you can get that nice clean cut on the bottom. So here we have a set of jigsaw blades, and at the top we have our top 4 blades, which are for cutting metal. They say metal on them to let you know that that is what you're supposed to be cutting. Then we come down here into our blades that are for cutting wood, and this top one here is our scrolling blade. It is really narrow and small, and so it's going to be better for tight corners, and if you're making really intricate designs, you're going to want to use your littler blade, the littlest one you have. Then you have your basic wood cutting blades for clean cuts, and they have one with a higher TPI, one with a lower TPI. And then this next one here, we have our downstroke blade. And then here we have our highest TPI and also roughest teeth. And so it's going to be for speed. It's going to give us our fastest cut. And then down here we have a blade that is in here for laminate floors. And if you look at what's special about this blade, the teeth are actually down in one direction and then up in the other direction. And so this is going to give us a clean edge on both sides of our board. So I have my fast wood cutting blade loaded into my jigsaw, and we're just going to make a quick cut right now. And this would be if I were using this for framing, and I have my speed square set up because I'm going to use it as a fence while I'm making this cut. And that's going to give me a nice 90-degree square cut. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to hook the ledge of my speed square over the edge of my board, and I'm going to clamp it tight with my hand. I'm using my arm to lean on my board to keep it from moving. I'm going to line up the plate of my jigsaw with the edge of my speed square. I want to keep the plate as flat as possible. I don't want to be tilting up or tilting down at all. I want it to be level with my, or flush with my surface. And then I'm going to start my blade. I'm going to pull the trigger, start my blade, and I want it to be away from my board when I start my blade. If I'm in contact with my board at all, it's just going to chop up the edge and it might kick back at me a little bit. So we're going to pull back maybe 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm going to start my blade, and I'm just going to follow the edge of my speed square with the plate of my jigsaw, and then it's going to give me a nice clean cut all the way through. So that's what we're going to do. So now I've loaded my scrolling blade into my jigsaw, and we're going to make a nice swivel cut to give the end of this board a little bit of a decorative appearance. The thing that we want to remember about this cut, since we are going to be making tighter turns, is that if we go too fast and we don't allow the blade time to catch up with our cut, then it's going to end up just bending our blade, and then our blade is going to kind of be useless at that point because it's not going to be making nice cuts. So we're going to be continuous about this cut because we don't want to keep stopping and going, but we also want to go slow enough to allow the blade to cut while keeping a consistent speed. So sometimes we are going to want to use our jigsaw to cut something out in the middle of a board instead of starting from the edge and sawing into it. So for that, we're going to take our drill and we're going to start by drilling a hole. And the thing that we want to remember is we want to make sure we're getting a drill bit that's going to be larger than the width of our blade, because we need the blade to be able to fit into the hole that we've drilled. So I'm gonna drill my hole pretty close to the edge because it's gonna give me an easier time starting when I go to make my cut. I could drill my hole in the middle and that would be fine. I would then just have to come all the way around, but I'm gonna start here. So now I've drilled my hole right at the edge of my circle, so I should be able to start my cut. So if we want to start our cut in the center of this board and maybe we don't have a drill with us, we can do a plunge cut. And that's going to look like this. So we already discussed how with the upward facing teeth, it's going to give us our jagged cut on the top surface of the board. What we can do to prevent that from happening is attach a sacrificial board to our board that we want to cut, which is going to be down here. So I've clamped a board on top of it. And what that's going to do, it's going to keep that top edge pushed up against the bottom edge of this sacrificial board. And so we'll hopefully get a cleaner cut on that bottom board. So now we have a cleaner edge on this top surface. Our bottom surface is still good, but compared to the top edge of our top surface, it's a little bit better. So sometimes we might want to use our jigsaw to rip a board, which means we are going in the direction of the fibers. And typically this cut would be done on a table saw, but maybe we don't have access to a table saw and we want to be able to mimic this type of cut. So what we're going to do is use our straight edge, which in this case is going to be our level, and we're going to use it as a fence. If we don't have a level, but we know that we have a really straight board because we sight down it and we can see that it's not crowning in either way, then we can use another board as our fence. So the first thing that we're going to do is mark our board. So I'm going to mark 2 inches, and I'm going to make a little mark at the edge of my board. Then what I'm going to do is take my jigsaw and I'm going to line up my blade on my waist side, so just to the left of my line, because this is what I am keeping. And then once that's lined up, I'm going to mark on the other side of my shoe, which is my base plate. So now I can take that second measurement. So I'm going to measure from the edge of my board to that second line, and it looks like I'm at 3 5/8. So I'm going to take that measurement and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to mark at 3 5/8. So now I can take my straight edge and position it just covering both of those lines. Not over, but just sitting directly on top of both of those lines. And I want my straight edge to be extending well past on either side, because what's going to happen is I'm going to be using it to make sure that my base plate is flush. And if I'm starting up here, I could be starting like this or like this and not realize it. So to make sure that I'm going in a consistent plane the whole way, I'm going to extend my straight edge well past on either side. So now I can take my clamps and I'm going to clamp my level where I want it. So now I have that clamped on 2 ends and it's not moving anywhere. So now I can come and I can make my cut, and as long as I'm following my fence, I'm going to get a consistent 2-inch cut all the way across. So now I have a cut that looks like I've ripped it in the table saw. So that is an intro to the basics of how to use the jigsaw. It should not replace any hands-on instruction that you receive before operating this tool on your own. So definitely find somebody who can show you the basics of how to operate it safely in person, and that way they can watch you while you're using it and make sure that you're being safe, and give you personalized tips for how to be even safer and maybe get your cuts even better. But hopefully that gives you an understanding of when you would choose to use this tool over a different tool and some of the various options that you have when operating this tool.